Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mega Magikarp YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to deeper details and build potential within Destiny 2. Today's episode is on the Life Exotic. This will be a review for an exotic piece of gear and its utility in PvE, PvP, Gambit, as well as any intricacies or build potential that is associated with that piece of gear. If you haven't subscribed already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be alerted when any video comes out. Today's exotic review is on Tommy's Matchbook, a solar exotic 720 round per minute auto rifle. It's acquired by the season pass, either immediately if you have the purchased version or at rank 35 if you're playing for free. For this review, the catalyst for the Matchbook, Heat of the Moment, while Ignition Trigger is active, your health recovers much faster, will not be included in the video, as the season literally just came out as I'm making this. I work a full-time job during the corona outbreak in downtown Seattle. What do you want from me? The stats on Matchbook are 59 stability, decent but nothing exciting, handling of 62, not bad, reload of 10, we'll get into that, but it's pretty bad, aim assist of 81, wait, hold up, am I reading that right? No? Yeah, it's 81. Okay. Okay, that's a lot. Yeah. Lastly, recoil direction of 64. It curves over to the right slightly while doing sustained fire, but overall the stability and recoil make for a pretty above average shooting experience overall. Hip fire having about an effective range of 15 meters before experiencing damage drop off, and ADS at about 24 meters. Its exotic perk, Ignition Trigger, reads, sustained fire with this weapon overheats it, increasing damage but burning the user. And Heat Sink, overheat damage is reduced when not aiming down sights. Looking past the exotic perks, there's several standout features to note, namely the 100 round magazine. This weapon is bound to the same rate of fire and impact classification as weapons like Steel Feather Repeater and Misfit, which average in the mid 50s for magazine size, so nearly double the magazine size, albeit trading off that with no built-in method of reloading faster, since it seems as though the usual rapid fire intrinsic properties of higher reserve ammunition, as well as faster reload when the magazine is empty, seem to be absent from the weapon entirely, which is unfortunate due to the supremely underwhelming reload speed of 10. So it's a bit of a give and take there. The other part of the weapon that's not explicitly listed anywhere is its unusual accuracy profile. Most guns in Destiny 2 have a noticeable accuracy cone spread when hip firing, starting accurate then blooming out over time. Let's just go and say that this weapon doesn't do that. While there's somewhat of a decent recoil amount to firing the weapon, the reticle crosshairs don't contract while firing, making the actual hipfire experience the weapon wants you to be in more enjoyable. Where things really start getting unusual with the gun is the in-air accuracy. Every single gun in Destiny 2 is less accurate from the air, even rocket launchers. Tommy's Matchbook doesn't play by the rules at all, which, considering it's based off of a Prohibition-era popularized Thompson submachine gun, aka the Chicago typewriter, that doesn't really surprise me now that I think about it. But the silly thing is somehow more accurate in the air than on the ground. The reticle literally shrinks in size when airborne. It's honestly the weirdest thing that I've noticed about the gun. The only thing I can figure being the reason why that would be the case, aside the already somewhat unusual hipfire accuracy, is that this is based off of an SMG, which historically in Destiny has been a very run and gun experience with a lot of aerial play available to them, and that combined with half the weapon wanting you to not ADS, I'm pretty sure that that's just Bungie's way of saying, hey, we're gonna throw them a little bit of a bone here, we're gonna let it so that their hipfire accuracy is going to be good no matter what, which as a player I guess that makes me pretty happy, but as somebody who's testing this, really had me going there. I had no idea what the hell was going on. As for the exotic perks themselves, the Ignition Trigger perk may look like a bad deal, and may remind some of the veteran players among us of the Touch of Malice, an exotic scout rifle that damaged you in a similar fashion. The Matchbook functions a bit differently than the old Oryx infused weapon though. Matchbook will begin to overheat at about 20 bullets deep into the magazine, and it will not damage you through your health. Your shields, the white part of the bar, will be completely depleted, but your health will stay up to full. You'll even get your health back if you take damage and you're still sustaining fire. The burn damage isn't insignificant. While you're hip fired, it takes about 12 ticks of burn to deplete your shields, and while ADS, you'll lose your shields at about 8, so about 50% more self-damage. And what do you get for this self-damage? Well, here's some numbers for you. A Rampage times 3 stack in PvE and PvP is about 133% damage output. A kill clip activation does the same thing. Multi-kill clip times 2 is also 133%, and multi-kill clip times 3 is 150%. Ignition Trigger is stacked differently in PvE and PvP, but in PvE, you're at 200% damage, and in PvP, you're at 150%, which is effectively multi-kill clip times 3 for free, But if you want to spool it up and have it ready for all encounters, you'll also just die faster from your own damage. Bows, hand cannons, sniper rifles, they'll all one-shot body you, and that's the kind of risk that you'll have to take with it. Jumping into PvP with this, I had a ton of fun using a weapon that let me do something I don't ever get to do in Destiny, but I love in other games. Using my life as a resource. Anyone who's thrown a life orb on a Gyarados or a Necropotence onto the table knows that feeling, and the Matchbook lets you replicate that. You get 31 damage headshots and 21 damage body shots, making engagements end super quick, either in your favor or the opponent's. Like I said, you can get body shot murdered by any sniper under the sun, but the ability to trounce even an active recluse or spare rations by sheer volume of firepower is among the most fun I've had in the Crucible in a long time. It really forces you to get creative in your engagements and think, can I take this guy out with how much health I have now? Should I pre-fire and try getting 2 down at once? It's really aggressive and unique in its playstyle. I don't think that the weapon is necessarily competitive. I think that just with the general killing potential that adaptive frame auto rifles have on top of their much better range than Matchbook, makes Matchbook rank underneath Suros and Hardlight in my opinion, but I think that it has its niche and it can play a lot like an SMG as well. So if you're not looking to explicitly play with a dedicated rifle and you want close range engagements, this weapon is going to be perfect. But outside of that 24 meter range, you're going to struggle a lot with this weapon, especially because the optics aren't particularly long and the stability isn't the most fantastic. So fun, yes. Good, yes. Gonna carry you to the lighthouse? I don't think so. In PvE, I think the weapon has some distinct downsides. The amount of damage you take from yourself is obviously a downside to play around, but even if you're playing it safe, walking around with a 100 round magazine on a primary weapon is never going to be a bad deal. And it just puts in work when you utilize it properly. When you're in a situation where you're able to constantly take cover, or if you're about to walk into an area that'll probably break your shields anyway, going in guns literally blazing is sometimes the best choice. Obviously, if you can mitigate the downside, then do so. I'll talk about what form that takes in a minute, but offhand, Devour is fairly obvious, healing rifts of any sort, and even One-Eyed Mask, where you mark yourself for vengeance and you finally realize that helmet is stupid. I'm getting off topic now. Anyway, the most unfortunate aspect of the Matchbook is while the amount of damage it outputs for a primary weapon is insane, it's still a scary proposition to hurt yourself in an environment that's already swarming you with multiple enemies to try to go full glass cannon. But I think the damage that it does is worth the risk a lot of the time through mid-level content. Stuff where champions are involved are kinda gonna sting, specifically anti-barrier champions. There's ways around the other 2 types of champions without using a weapon mod, but I think you'll be able to bring it into any encounter that doesn't explicitly require ranged fighting and do well with it. If you're gonna be constantly relying on a special weapon for ranged fighting though, looking at you Garden of Salvation last encounter, it may be a bit of a downer for you there since it just doesn't have much going on regards to fighting past a stone's throw besides just having so many bullets they'll eventually just die from you nickel and diming them over and over again. One last part I want to talk about is the Gambit review, and honestly, I think the weapon there without a build around is an actively bad idea. I do all of my testing in Gambit Prime with the tougher enemies, and between their higher health pool and invasions and the game literally just kicking you out if somebody levels up, you're basically setting yourself up for losing motes. It doesn't do enough damage to blockers to warrant using as a blockbuster primary weapon relative to its self-inflicted damage. It has virtually no range against invaders if they're sniping, and the usual PvE problem of taking damage when you don't want a bunch of different angles to be shot by is compounded when enemies just do so much damage and don't die very quickly. That caveat of if you're not running a build is important because when you are capitalizing on the strengths of this weapon is a lot better than trying to just brute force it into working, but as a standalone experience without any kind of synergistic backing, I can't honestly recommend it. As for the perks and synergies to look out for, anything that reloads the weapon faster is a great idea. If you're already running another rifle weapon like a sniper rifle or a linear fusion in your heavy slot, the generic rifle loader will cover them both. It'll take up a good amount of your energy at 5, but it'll only take up 1 mod slot at the very least. Auto Rifle Reloader is just 1 energy, but it's also specific to solar. Otherwise, class-specific ways of reloading like Hunter Dodge, Bottom Tree Striker, Frontal Assault. As a matter of fact, the entirety of playing Bottom Tree Striker Titan with Skullfort is very much a Matchbook playstyle. Not exactly revolutionary, but still powerful nonetheless. The biggest elephant in the room, the Actium War Rig. These things are silly with the Matchbook. You have effectively a 200 plus round magazine when you're using them. It's a ton of fun to never reload. It's an even deadlier sweet business in the energy slot. If you're a Titan, I'd say give it a shot, especially if you're running Bottom Tree Hammer Titans or Top Tree Sentinels. Or like I mentioned before, the Bottom Tree Arc Titan with the Frontal Assault perk active. Say 14 top tree titans in particular also get really strong passive health regeneration after meleeing something. Granted, of course, you have to get the kill. Blessing of Light from the bubble itself also is really strong, especially because you also get the Weapons of Light intrinsic benefit of 35% additional damage. When doing the damage testing from that, it looks as though that the damage buffs don't exactly line up to be multiplicative. Rather, the 35% additional damage from Weapons of Light set the base damage for the weapon to be at 135% damage, and then the Matchbook perk actually doubled that 135%, so it's probably closer to about 270 from the original base damage. I could be wrong. I'm not exactly a mathematician. I failed Algebra 2 3 times. I'm lazy. What do you want from me? Meanwhile, Devour Warlock, I mean, duh. Obviously, it's going to be pretty insane with the gun, mitigating the downside of the perk. Most Warlocks in general get a lot of uptime with the perk though, just because healing rifts just literally turn off the downside of the weapon, when hip firing anyway. You heal it off when you're hip firing because of heatsink. You can't say the same for ADS, you'll lose more health than you gain that way, but it'll keep you in the fight for the most part. Hunters, I'm actually a little bit at a build potential loss with you guys. I don't think really Arc Striders make a lot of sense with it because you just get within punching and killing distance before Matchbook gets any further than being a generic auto rifle. And gunslingers don't really get much use out of it besides chaining together a couple of chains of woe on top tree or a bunch of super energy on bottom tree, but otherwise kind of stretching the synergies a little bit. And Night Stalkers don't have anything in their kit to make this super relevant to them either way. So let me know down in the comments section what you think of Tommy Matchbook for Hunters. And for the rest of you, what do you think of the Matchbook? I, for one, am looking forward to getting that rank 100 exotic ornament, but that's just me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.